He's one of the best-known and best-selling writers working today, the thoughtful and thought-provoking Malcolm Gladwell. He's sitting down for a meeting of the minds with our David Pogue.
On Tuesday, a new Malcolm Gladwell book comes out, and if history is any guide, it will be a bestseller.
They're stories about ideas. They have characters, they have plots. I'm usually trying to say something about the world.
His first book, The Tipping Point, published in 2000, established the Gladwell recipe. He explores a theme through anecdotes and little-known scientific studies.
Tipping Point was about the epidemic is an incredibly useful way of understanding how ideas move through society. And epidemics have rules. So let's learn the rules, right?
His 7 New York Times bestsellers have sold 23 million copies in North America alone. His fee for corporate speeches is $350,000.
My podcast about things overlooked and misunderstood.
His fans have downloaded 250 million episodes of his podcast, Revisionist History, and he founded a company called Pushkin Industries to produce it. Wow, so this is Pushkin North.
Pushkin North, yeah.
In other words, Gladwell has come a long way from the small Canadian town where he grew up, son of a British father and a Jamaican mother, whom he describes as subversive.
I used to skip a lot of school. My mom used to write me notes with a blank, Malcolm, dear so-and-so, Malcolm is excused from class today, and then the date would be blank, and I would just fill out the date.
He attended the University of Toronto, but his best education was the 10 years he worked for the Washington Post.
I knew nothing about newspapers. I was so raw. I was 23, I think, or 24. Bob Woodward was 2 rows away from me. I learned at the feet of the greatest journalists of my generation.
In 1996, Gladwell joined The New Yorker. He wrote about why, in the 90s, New York's crime rate plummeted in an article called The Tipping Point.
And from that, I get a book contract, and that's when the book comes out in 2000.
That book introduced a recurring Gladwellian theme, hidden patterns in the way the world works. He's a world-class contrarian about college.
You should never go to the best institution you get into. Never.
About working from home.
Sitting in your pajamas in your bedroom, is that the work life you want to live?
About football.
I think the sport is a moral abomination.
Do you like being provocative?
Of course. I like poking the bear. I mean, journalists should poke the bear. Thank you for buying 6 books.
Gladwell's fans love his storytelling and the aha moments they bring. His critics, on the other hand, wow. They've described his writing as generalizations that are banal, obtuse, or flat wrong, and simple, vacuous truths dressed up with flowery language. I mean, you cherry-pick your data, you confuse correlation with causation, you oversimplify. I mean, you've heard all that stuff.
I'm fine with the idea that not everyone's going to like my work. 100% of people don't like anything.
But last time we profiled you, you told Kelafasane...
I would rather be interesting than correct. Yeah, that is an overly provocative way of saying things. No, what I meant was, if I turn out not to be right, I'm not devastated. I accept that as the price of doing business. And this is a studio. This is where it all happens.
Gladwell often turns his mistakes into new chapters or podcast episodes. In The Tipping Point, he explained that New York's crime drop was the result of broken windows policing. As he says in an upcoming episode,
little crimes were tipping points for big crimes.
But that philosophy led to New York's policy of stop and frisk.
Yes, doing 700,000 police stops a year of young black and Hispanic men is deeply problematic. And we were wrong. I was part of that. I'm sorry.
Which brings us to the new book, Revenge of the Tipping Point.
The original Tipping Point is a very optimistic, rosy book about the possibilities for using the laws of epidemics to promote positive social change. In the last 25 years, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the other side of that problem, which is what happens when people use the laws of epidemics in ways that are malicious or damaging or self-interested.
The book's stories range from topics as obscure as cheetah reproduction
The synagogue of Munich destroyed by fire. Citizens
to stories as big as the Holocaust.
of the bank, killing several innocent.
He writes that almost nobody talked about the Holocaust, or even called it that, until NBC aired a miniseries called Holocaust in 1978.
And what changed happened like that. I mean, it was just this kind of, there is a tipping point in our understanding of the Holocaust.
The new book arrives at a tipping point in Gladwell's own life. In a span of 5 years, he got engaged, had 2 children, turned 61, and moved from Manhattan to pastoral Hudson, New York. Is it a lot to handle, or is it all just going exactly according to the plan?
Of course it's a lot to handle, but there isn't a single person who ever lived whose parents did not say, this is a lot. You know, I came quite late to parenthood. It's like the best thing in the world. I have become the person that, I once despised, and nothing makes me happier.
He also despises Ivy League colleges, accusing them of prioritizing their own reputations over focusing on their students.
If you want to get a science and math degree, don't go to Harvard.
Has fatherhood affected your outlook on any of the things that you've written about before, Ivy League schools?
Well, it's prepared me for the possibility that I will be a massive hypocrite. So, it's one thing to write about what you should do with your kids when you don't have them. We're trying to do longer, more involved projects at Pushkin.
For all his success, Malcolm Gladwell maintains that nothing has changed in his approach, his work ethic, or his contrarianism.
It hasn't changed what I do. I don't farm out my research. I'm still in the thick of things. I still go on reporting trips. It hasn't gotten old. In fact, my great regret is I don't have time to do more.